Hey everyone, welcome back to Trade Talk, the collected edition comic review show. Thanks to everyone who ended up listening to the first episode that I put out last week. I hope to continue this weekly, as I mentioned, and episodes will drop on Friday. And I'm going to try to give reviews of a couple of books each week, and maybe not give as many spoilers as I did the first time around. Kind of give you some reviews that don't delve too deep into kind of the storyline, but maybe give you guys a little bit of the details in order to get you interested in maybe checking these things out. Once again, we're on the Late Night Chat Network, where we do a few other podcasts right now currently. So check us out on SoundCloud. If you are listening to this episode off of there, check out the actual page. We have the Late Night Chat with JT and Niko show that I do, along with my buddy JT. And I also have another comic review show called Weekly Wine Comic Time that I do with my girlfriend Christine, where we actually review single-issue new comics that come out week to week. So yeah, give it a listen if you enjoyed this. And if you have any feedback in regards to this show, anything you'd like to see or have reviewed maybe, possibly, please drop me a line and let me know. So for today, I'll be reviewing two newer release books that have come out. The first one here is a regular size hardcover edition of The Green Lantern, written by Grant Morrison with art by Liam Sharp. And also, I would also like to add the colorist Steve Oliff. Yeah, well, he's a colorist who's been around a long time. He actually famously colored the early in the 90s, I guess, the Marvel Epic releases of Akira. He was the colorist, if I'm not mistaken, for those. So yeah, he is a well-known colorist and has been in the industry for a long time. I actually did not notice that he colored this till now, but I wanted to point that out, which makes a lot of sense now, because the colors on this book were fantastic. A lot of the art was dark, in the sense that, I guess, like, I don't know, between his pencils and inks, or even like the setting, or maybe even some of that has to do with some of the coloring that he chose to use in this Steve Oliff in this storyline. But at the same time, many other scenes were very vibrant and colorful. Whenever you saw like Oa in this, the planet of the Green Lanterns, or some of the other places that they visited in space, they very much popped off the page when appropriate. And there's a lot of jam-packed different types of colors in some of these scenes where you wouldn't actually expect some of these things to blend together, but he just made everything look really, really, really good. Basically, this is Grant Morrison's take on Hal Jordan, Green Lantern. And when this book was announced, they had said that this was going to be Hal Jordan actually acting like a Green Lantern and actually being like a space cop, essentially. So it's not going to be like your regular like lanterns against other colored lanterns, Jeff Johns type storyline or something of that nature. This is more of Hal Jordan with the Corps, actually just investigating different like random space crimes, essentially, and that is what this first volume was, and in the very Grant Morrison way, very strange and weird too. I'd heard some people compare this to 2001 AD, like the British line of comics that Liam Sharp and Grant Morrison actually had written and drawn for in the past. So if it does seem a little bit like that, I'll have to take people's word for it. My 2001 AD knowledge is not that vast. I know that's where like things like Judge Dredd came from, and I know that's where a lot of the before the British invasion, like a bunch of the writers and artists that came from that wave of books, that's what they mostly worked on over there. So yeah, and this is a beautiful looking book. Like I said, between the colors that I mentioned and Liam Sharp's art, I mean, I really hope they come out with a big collected edition of this, like a big deluxe edition hardcover after this is all said and done. I might have to double dip on that and get like a more oversized version of this art, because it is beautiful art. And Liam Sharp, his art really, like, in terms of like artist styles today, stands out. His style is almost like unlike anybody else's that's doing comics at this time. It's really like his character figure work is very weirdly shaped and almost grotesque looking, a lot of the characters, and it really works well for a lot of the alien creatures in this. And it's not like a fine clean line either. It's hard to describe. Like, a lot of the guys have a lot of cross hatching, kind of inking done on like their faces to show like actual wrinkle lines and texture to their faces. Think a little bit like Frank Quietly-esque, I guess, who's worked with Morrison a lot, but in that sense, it's also a lot different. Like, his when he gets to his space scenes, and he kind of just goes crazy on the backgrounds, and just like a lot of detail that he adds to the backgrounds of like all those space scenes in this book. And not only that, like his like the fight scenes are interesting. The creatures, if he created all of these different aliens just based off what Morrison kind of said he wanted, all the different characters he drew out in this that may or may not have existed prior to this looked fantastic. Just really, I can't say enough about the art. Like, the art, even if you're not into this kind of strange offbeat story that Morrison is telling in this book is definitely worth checking out on the art alone. Because me personally, I started reading this in issues originally, and I ended up dropping it. It got a lot of hype. Obviously, I guess, you get a little bit of that always with Grant Morrison, because he is a high profile creator, and when he actually comes back to do something for DC now, it always gets a lot of attention. But I don't know, either wasn't reading well for me, or I just didn't kind of get it for the first couple issues, and I ended up dropping it. And I'm like, okay, well, if I hear good things about it, I end up picking up the hardcover when it comes out. And I did, and I read this, and I really ended up enjoying it. I really, really like this. So essentially, it's Hal Jordan. He's kind of a dick in this. I mean, a lot of people have felt that way about the character before, and Grant Morrison does write him that way. Like, he's kind of like, kind of a show-off in a sense. He even calls himself a bastard in this story when he's referring to himself. So, like, he's obviously great at what he does, and he kind of is a little cocky, and he comes off that way in this. And not only that, you see so many weird other lanterns in this, and like there's a guy that has a volcano for a head, and it's constantly like erupting when he's talking, so like his actual dialogue gets a little muffled and weird, like and you could hear like the actual bubbling of the fucking molten lava coming out from his head. And like there's a giant hamster creature at one point that they have to take down. And you've seen some weird Green Lantern alien type races before, like there is a bird lady in this and things like that of that nature we've seen before. But and apparently, I don't know about the volcano guy. I mean, as far as I know, I think that's a new character, but I know that the diamond guy, I believe, is an old character. I wouldn't be surprised. But this is what Grant Morrison does. He finds all these weird kind of stories and kind of incorporate like older type material from DC's past. You may have seen one of these guys maybe once in a comic in the fucking 60s or something. And Grant Morrison will kind of pick up on that. His DC knowledge of older stuff is just very vast, and he almost makes things feel new again because he taps into a lot of these throwaway ideas in a sense, and that's why it kind of feels like throwbacky and kind of weird old comic, like very comic booky types tropes that he's dealing with, and that's why the story comes off a little wacky and out of place in today's times in comics. So, and that's a good thing. All those are good things. And then when you get to the end of the hardcover, they actually they had an article, I guess, that ran on one of the comics news sites that they actually included in this. Where just in the first like issue of Green Lantern, there's like several Easter eggs apparently that were actually included in the issue of past occurrences that happen in old Green Lantern comics, and they go into every certain scene with Grant Morrison's notes pointing out where he kind of pulled this material from, or and this is just within the first issue itself that he kind of pointed all these things out. So yeah, like within like the first like several 8 pages or something. So yeah, they even give you an example of that at the back of this book. So this is nothing new to Grant Morrison. And if that's within just the first issue, I can't even tell you going forward, because this collects the first 6 issues in this. There was probably even more stuff that I didn't pick up on. I'm not I haven't read too much Green Lantern, so I don't really know a lot about these characters. But Grant Morrison always seems to kind of pick up on things that even people that have read shitloads of these characters past have never realized before, right? So he's really good at doing that. And yeah, the Atom shows up in this. You see all the different Guardians of Oa. You even see those aliens from like the Invasion storyline, which I guess was back from the late 80s, early 90s that DC ran. The Dominators, I guess they're part of the Dominion or whatever. You basically see a character that looks like God in this. It turns out he's, a little spoiler there, I guess, he's not really God, but he is somebody who is portraying himself as God to kind of, get things done. He calls himself the Shepherd. So yeah, just the creativeness and the weirdness of this story alone, plus with the awesome art, this made a really, really fun read and very interesting, and I'm looking forward to more. So definitely check this out if you're a Grant Morrison fan, or even a fan of not your average type of superhero story that is being told these days, along with fantastic art. And yeah, and that's essentially what it is. Hal is investigating different weird things in this. Not everyone is who they seem, especially Hal Jordan. You'll find out some more about him during this story and the part that he's playing within the Green Lantern Corps these days. And yeah, it's just a hell of a lot of fun. All right, and for my second book today, I'm going to talk about Robert Kirkman, one of his new creator-owned things he's writing over at Image Comics. The book was called Die, Die, Die. Now, this book famously kind of hit the markets without actually being solicited like normal comics do. It was almost like a mystery comic that just came and showed up on the shelves of comic book stores one day. So Robert Kirkman's kind of been playing with the expectations of the market and how you kind of bring out books now for a little while. Not only with this, he also did that recently with the end of The Walking Dead, where he announced that he didn't announce that it was going to end. It was just like a day before it actually came out. It's like, oh yeah, The Walking Dead tomorrow is the last issue. They announced it, and they even solicited for a couple of future issues that never ended up coming out. So he's been kind of playing with kind of like the ways you can kind of sell a book and to throw readers' expectations off with what we're so used to now with the we have to pre-order 3 months ahead and this kind of thing. So this collects the first 8 issues that have come out so far of this series. Written by Robert Kirkman, art by Chris Burnham. I'm a big Chris Burnham fan, and speaking of Otley, sorry, not Otley. Well, in a way, he actually does have a little bit of a Ryan Otley style from Invincible in terms of his violence. Like the violence that he kind of portrays in his art is full force in this book as well. Like he has a really great way of showing people's brains getting blown through their heads, and fucking people just pummeling the shit out of each other or stabbed. Like and he's worked with Grant Morrison before on a lot of his Batman stuff, and a book called Nameless they put out through Image Comics. He did Batman Incorporated with him, and he followed Frank Quietly. And I was gonna say he has a very Frank Quietly-esque type style, but he also in a way he's not like a clone of his in any shape or form. He earlier in his career it looked like it was kind of more leaning towards something like that, but now he's got a mix of different things going on now. People could even compare some of his style to even Nick Pitarra as well. He worked on Manhattan projects. He's also kind of got a little bit of him, I would say, in his art. It's very cartoony, and but his character work is good. And like I said, he's able to convey a lot of violence and different crazy shit blowing up and action scenes. His fighting scenes are fantastic in this. What I had heard about this when it first came out from some reviewers is this is basically like Robert Kirkman doing his best Garth Ennis, and in that sense I could kind of see where they're coming from, because these are a lot of mean-spirited individuals in this book. It's just full of people you don't like right off the bat, just horrible fucking people. But the difference that sets Garth Ennis apart from whatever Robert Kirkman this is, even me going into this book, reading the first issue, I couldn't really tell this was Robert Kirkman. So if this is him growing as a writer, You know, maybe that's a good thing, but for me, I was just like, I don't know. Like, it took me a while to kind of get into this one. Like, towards the end of the 8 issues, I felt that, okay, we're working with a little something here. I was mostly just sticking along with it for the Chris Burnham art, which I think that this is probably some of the best work of his career so far. He's gotten much better. But the story itself was just okay. I'm kind of undecided whether or not I'm going to pick up the second volume. Like I said, by the end of this, you know, there was some things going on where I was interested to see where they went. But if you were reading this in issues, I don't see how anybody would have stayed on this after a couple of issues, because I didn't find it that enjoyable. It took a while to really get to know these characters. And by the end, I still don't really feel like I like any of them. Because Garth Ennis, despite him having a lot of horrible people in some of the stories he's written in the past, he has an underlying, like, there's heart to it. Like, there's always heartfelt moments. There's also poignant moments, character moments that they actually go through important things and character growth. And I didn't find any of that in this. This is basically about, like, 3 siblings from when they were young. They were taught to basically be assassins from their famous father, who was an assassin. And so, like, as they were little kids, they were running missions, and these guys are all twins. They're all, like, identical siblings. I guess they had 4 children originally, but one of them had to be taken out because he just wasn't like the other 3. And this is about, like, the twisted society we kind of live in now with the States, between politics. There's some dirty politicians in here and how the things run behind the scenes, as well as the government's involvement with these assassins. And they kind of get all mixed up in everyone's business in this. One person kind of, outsmarts another. There's a lot of people that are kind of against each other behind the scenes. Like, things are moving into place. There's a lot of espionage type stuff going on. There's a lot of killing going on. So yeah, it's again, it is hard to describe at its core what kind of a story this is. I mean, like I said, it's very violent, and there is a lot of interplay between a lot of different characters within the storyline. But other than, like, the dirty government presence with politicians, as well as these assassins, these globe-trotting assassin-type characters right now, and everyone kind of, you know, against each other, that's basically what this is. And, you know, I feel like some of the subtext, some of the things that Robert Kirkman is using these characters to kind of describe maybe how he sees the world today. Like, you know, there is some moments where some of the characters go on, like, a diatribe about like their position in the world, and, like, within politics and the government, and just being pissed off at society and this kind of stuff. And again, it's kind of like a Robert Kirkman I haven't really seen before. So you would kind of have to try this out. Maybe try out a few issues if any of this sounds interesting to you, or pick up the trade. I mean, it's a $20 trade for 8 issues, retail price. If you can get it cheaper than that, it's definitely worth checking out just on the content, how much issues worth the content you'll get with that, as well as the art is great. So yeah, undecided whether or not I'm going to stick with the second volume. You know, it was just okay for me. I will say towards the end, there was a few interesting plots that I was following during this whole storyline that I was interested to see where they go, but if I don't end up picking the next volume up, I won't be super disappointed. All right, so that'll do for today, guys. Once again, let me know if you did listen to this, what you enjoyed, what maybe I can work on. I am still getting used to kind of just talking into the mic by myself instead of having a co-host. And I hope I didn't spoil too much for you today, because I'm going to be trying to give reviews on these books moving forward, where I kind of let you know what I did or did not like about the books, but without trying to spoil too much. So for when you go pick up the book or not, you know, there is still some surprises in store for you. All right, I'll see you guys next time.